ahead and start the recording. Welcome everybody to Library Live. Today's session is on annotated bibliographies and literature reviews. So I would like you to, as we're getting started, to drop in the chat either an emoji about how you're feeling today, maybe an emoji that expresses your emotion today, or if you want to, you can type in some words in the chat to let me know, why are you here today? Do you have an annotated bibliography to complete? Are you working on a literature review? Have you been to other library lives? Any feedback like that. And meanwhile, I'm going to share my slide. And as you can see, I'm piping in from my home office in Highland Park, and I left my working glasses at my desk at the library. So you're gonna maybe see me doing different things. Actually, I might just do that, but actually no, then I can't see. Okay, so throw me a thumbs up. Let me check the chat and read why you are here. Very good, working on a literature review. Okay, class, this one particular class has me overwhelmed. I'm with you on that. It's a very overwhelming time. Remember that when you are sending messages on the chat, if you could put everyone, that way we all can see your message. Otherwise, it just comes directly to me, and not everybody can see your question. Okay, you have an annotated bibliography due tonight. Oh my goodness. Okay, so maybe we're gonna definitely show how to do one. And then I encourage you, everybody really, even myself, to not wait to the last minute, because it causes a lot of distress and a lot of panic, and it's better to, do it incrementally. Okay, so before we get started, I'm gonna put in the chat my office, which is Library North 2015. So you could either go get the prize that belongs to you, CJ and Evelyn, or what I will do is, actually better yet, what I will do is I will leave your prize at the circulation desk at the Cal State L.A. library. Does that sound good? So CJ and Evelyn, thank you for participating in the little sort of warm-up that we had right now. Who was that artist? And you could pick up your prize, which I won't tell you what it is. I was almost gonna say what it was, at the circulation desk at the library. Sound good? Could throw me a thumbs up or something like that. The other thing I'm gonna say is that as I'm starting the slideshow, is that I don't have my partner that's with me all the time, Kelsey. She's my partner in Library Live. And so I'm gonna be kind of stumbling around a little bit. You might see me stumbling around because I'm kind of navigating, letting everybody in, checking the chat and all of that stuff. So without further ado, because we do have a lot of things to cover, let me go ahead and get on with the presentation. All right, so literature reviews and annotated bibliographies. The way we're going to do the session is we will, first of all, talk about the definition and purpose of an annotated bibliography. I'm going to show you examples of what they should include and how they should look. Then I am going to actually give you a little practice run. We'll do this via chat, the Your Turn exercise. And then I'm going to dive into what's a literature review and talk about its definition and purpose. I'm going to talk about sample literature reviews, like what they look like as well in an academic article, a peer-reviewed article. And then at the end, we'll have a quiz. And actually, I think the quiz is going to happen right after the annotated bibliography. So my slides are a little bit mixed up, but I can fix them a little later, the order. All right, so what is an annotated bibliography? Simply put, an annotated bibliography contains two things. It's the citation, either in MLA or APA format of a source. Typically in college, we're talking about journal articles, a book you're reading, a chapter in a book that you're reading, a primary source that you're engaging. Anything that you're going to use for your research, you have to cite it at the top, followed by a paragraph that annotates, that has an annotation of that summary of that source. The annotation must have 3 components: a summary, some sort of evaluation of the article or the source, and then a reflection on how you're going to use that source. What is the purpose of this? Why do we do this? You will have this assignment very often in college. It's a very typical assignment. And one of the main things that happens when you do an annotated bibliography is that you actually have to read some of the stuff. You might not necessarily read the article from, page 1 to page 30, but you definitely are going to have to engage the article in some way. Now, I want to, okay, I was just making sure that I was recording this. We are. Okay, I also want to say that when you actually read the article, what you're going to have to do in an annotated bibliography is some critical thinking, because not only are you going to have to synthesize what the main argument is, like first find what are they talking about, what's the main argument in this article, but then you also have to put it in your own words in a paraphrase, and then you have to make a connection between that source that you're reading and some other source that you're thinking about, or some other idea. So all of these annotated bibliographies, eventually what can happen is, let's say you have 6 articles that you've annotated, you have an annotated bibliography, you can put those articles together and make building blocks so that at the end you have a larger literature review sort of paper. Does that kind of make sense? You can throw me a thumbs up at any point. You can also put in the chat, can you explain that again? I didn't get that part. No problem. And then if I don't see you, because I'm sort of, navigating a few things, make sure that I get to your question. Okay, so the actual annotation, the annotated bibliography is going to have 4 things. The citation, your professor is probably going to say, I want it in APA format. I want it in MLA format. It's your job to find either the quick guide or the actual like MLA handbook or the APA manual and do the citation correctly. That's one of the jobs that you must, it's a requirement of really a lot, almost every college student. That's your job. And I'll show you where you can find those handouts so that you can just match your citation in the correct format that your professor wants it in. Okay, once you do the citation, that's sort of the easy part. The second part, which is the summary, is you're going to have to find where in this article is the author actually saying, my argument is, or I propose that, or we argue such and such. Where is it in the article? And you will have to identify it, and you could either quote it or you could try to put it in your own words. It's basically going to be the answer to, this study is about, and then you fill in the blank. The next part, after you do that, that could take you 1 or 2 sentences. The next sentence or 2 will be your evaluation. Here is where you will evaluate the source, meaning you're going to tell us, how is it useful? How is this article useful? What kind of contributions does this article or this study make? You can finish off this evaluation sentence by starting off and saying, this study is significant because blah, 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 blah. Then the third part, which is maybe the last sentence, is the connection that you're going to make, where you're going to say, this source connects to my paper because it helps me to provide evidence for such and such. Or this article is important for my essay because the thesis that they argue helps to support something that I'm also wanting to champion or argue. Or you could say something like, the way that I'm going to use this article is by using these particular quotes in it. Okay, so what I want you to do right now is in the chat, I want you to tell me what are the 4 components of the annotation. Okay, let me see if there's any chats coming through. What are the 4 components? Okay, let's see if there's a chat in here. Citation, very good. Evaluation, good. The first part is where you say the connection, good. Okay, we're missing a very critical part where you summarize, right? Summarize, good. Or say in your own words what the article is about. Okay, you're going to have access to these slides. And actually right now, let me, for those of you who are just joining us, I'm going to put the link to our slides that we're using. You will have access to these slides. So you can look at them later after today's session. Okay, so for everybody who just came into the Zoom, these are the slides that we're working with. So the summary part, that's a really difficult part. Let me just, be real about it. So it's difficult because the summary part, you have to use your own words, a paraphrase, to say what the article is about. Okay, and sometimes it's harder. It's like easier said than done. So I want to make sure that you look at this slide later when you're looking at this at the slide presentation on your own as you're doing your annotations tonight or later. And you can use this Bloom's taxonomy to figure out some of the words or some of the things that can help you to summarize. That means like recall or define or describe, the argument that they're talking about. That's the purple and the blue part. And then the part where you're doing the analysis, the interpretation, the evaluation, the application, right? That's that second part where you're saying the significance of this article is da 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 da. That's the green sections that you see right there, where you're going to compare it to something else, or you're going to say how this article is distinguished from the other one. What kind of reference is Bloom's taxonomy? I don't think I understand the question, but Magdali, would you like to unmic to ask the question? Because I'm not exactly sure I understand.
This is Maggie. How are you? Leticia, do you hear me?
You could also maybe elaborate a little bit in the chat. Or perhaps somebody else might be able to. Okay, Magdali, yes.
Leticia, do you hear me? I'm sorry, I have a hard time with my.
Okay, yes, I see your mic is off.
Do you, okay.
So you could go ahead and, yes.
Yeah, you hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Sorry, that was like a delay a lot. Okay.
We still can hear you, Magdali.
Sorry.
So what I would like you to do is type it in the chat.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to try to interpret what you're trying to say. Okay. So what kind of reference is Bloom's taxonomy? Bloom's taxonomy is used all over the place by educators. And the reason why we use it is because it's very helpful in a visual chart format. It illustrates a lot of the complexity of what occurs during the critical thinking process. When you are recalling facts, when you are explaining them in your own words, when you're making connections between this idea and that idea, when you're synthesizing an argument and putting it in your own words, where you're saying, this argument is stronger than this argument because, and then providing evidence for it. And then especially the red part, where you're producing an essay, you're writing your own essay. All of those elements comprise critical thinking. And I wanted to leave this grid for you here, this little visual representation, to help you think of some words when you're doing your own annotations. Okay, like this article is related to that article because da 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 da. This article helps me to defend my argument because it has a very useful quote. Do you see how I'm pulling these words to help me paraphrase my synthesis? Yes. So it's evaluation. All of this green part and yellow part, and also the red part is evaluation, critical thinking. Okay, so I think we got to your question. All right, very good, Magdali. Thank you for asking that question. So let me go on to the next one. Let's take a look at an example, okay? This example, first of all, does it have the parts? Well, right away I can see, yeah, it has the citation there, right? And I can tell this is a citation because that's the last name of the author, Enrich, and then the first letter, first initial is B. The name of the book is Nickel and Dimed on Not Getting By in America. And then the next part of this is the publisher information and the year of publication. All right, so they checked off the first part. What about the next three elements? These are the difficult elements. And then Destiny, I see you unmuted. Did you want to add something?
Oh, I've been muted. But no, I don't want to add anything. Thank you though.
It says summary.
Okay, thank you, Destiny. Magdali, did you want to add?
Yes, do you hear me? Do you hear me?
So I think something's wrong with the settings because we still can't hear you. All right, so let's see if they have the other elements, okay? The elements of this are the first part, the summary. Okay, so the summary says, let me read it. In this book of nonfiction, based on the journalist's experiential, or in this book of nonfiction, based on the journalist's experiential research,
to my client.
Enrich attempts to ascertain whether it is currently possible for an individual to live on a minimum wage in America. So another way I could say that is the main purpose of this book was this journalist's experimental research where she tried to figure out whether it's possible to live on a minimum wage in America. Okay, then they dive into a little bit more summary. Taking jobs as a waitress, a maid, in a cleaning service, and at Walmart as a Walmart sales employee, the author summarizes and reflects on her work, her relationships with fellow workers, and her financial struggles in each situation. So what happens in this book is this journalist, she takes 3 jobs, one as a waitress, one as a maid in a cleaning service, and another one at Walmart. And she's writing an ethnography of her experiences being a worker in these places. And then based on that, she continues. An experienced journalist, Enrich is aware of the limitations of her experiment and the ethical implications of her experimental research tactics, and reflects on the issues in the text. So that's a little bit more summary, right? So most of this is summary. Okay, where is the analysis? Well, let's take a look. The author is forthcoming about her results and supplements her experiences with scholarly research on her places of employment, the economy, and the rising costs of living in America. Enrich's project is timely, descriptive, and well-researched. All right, so I see some hands. Let me go to the hands. Oh, so I can see who has their hands raised. Nancy, go ahead.
It's just that you were speaking
with the specialties
and somebody
of the
else was
finance.
unmuted and
Then after that.
Oh, I'm muted.
What else can I put after finance?
no,
Was this the
somebody
whole
needs
time
to
I was
mute.
muted?
Can I put
No,
technology?
somebody's
Can I put
talking.
technology will help?
And we can't hear you because somebody else is speaking over you.
Say again?
Can I put technology will help?
Telechi, it's Telechi. Can you please mute your mic?
No.
Because we could
Okay,
hear
wait a
you.
minute. I'm sorry, everybody. Gosh.
Yes.
Wait, do you mean that all this time I was talking, you couldn't hear me?
Right.
Oh,
we
we
can't
could-
hear
we
you.
can
hear you. We can hear you. It's just that there was an echo of someone else. I don't know.
And we hear somebody else too.
You.
Somebody else too.
Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Like I said in the beginning, I don't have my tech support today. And so
Maybe if you can find a place where you can mute everyone.
yeah, so okay. Thanks for helping me, everybody. Let me see if I can do that right now, okay? Oh, that's unfortunate.
As of right
Okay.
now, everybody looks muted as of right now.
Everybody looks muted. Okay. Okay. So I want to ask, did you hear the part where I said what's the purpose of the annotated bibliography and what were the parts? More or less? Not
No,
really, right?
no.
Okay, so I'm not going to continue because go back because we've lost a lot of time. And I think what I'll do is I'm going to record the session again. Or maybe I'll provide the session again. I'll record the session again so that it's a clean copy, okay? And then for whoever was here, I will also send you the copy, like the link to the video. Okay, but let's go back to this one, okay? So let's pretend, sometimes things happen, mistakes. We got to brush it off, okay? And let's just continue where we were. All right, so let's take a look at this annotated bibliography, okay? It's got the citation, very good. And then it's got some summary in here, but does this person make an assessment of the source? Like, are they telling us something where they're using their own critical thinking to say that, these, like they're giving some sort of evaluation? What do you think? You could put a yes in the chat, a Y in the chat if you think so, or an N if you think, no, not really. Are they providing assessment or like an evaluation of the article?
They're not giving, Leticia, it's Magdalia. I'm back with a different
Okay.
computer. Sorry. I don't see any, there is some sort of a summary, but I don't see a connection. It just
Okay.
says it's timely descripted and well researched. I'm not sure
Okay,
what that
good.
means to that
You're right. You're totally right. So the very end, there is a bit
person's
of evaluation,
project.
right? So at the end, there's a bit of an evaluation because they're saying that this is a timely project. It's well researched. That's my opinion. Okay, but what they're missing is one of the most important things in an annotated bibliography, which is to say that this is how I'm going to use, this is how I'm going to apply the article. Okay, so now I want to give you a real life annotation. That one I pulled from the OWL Purdue website. And this one is coming from some actual research, and the research area is children's literature. Believe it or not, people study children's literature in a scholarly way. So at the very top, there's the citation, right? And then this annotation says, this gives a history of when people use watches more for time rather than for show, and traces the connection between middle-class values like using time well and being punctual with the availability of accurate timepieces. Okay, what is this person doing so far? They're telling us the summary, right? What is this about? And what I like about this example is that they're using language that's natural to them, right? By just, saying, this gives a history of when people da, 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 da. One of the most interesting cultural concepts is the importance of subjective time versus absolute time, the latter embraced by Newton. Newton said that time passes the same everywhere for everyone, but other people, notably Clarke, supported an idea that time is subjective. Okay, are they doing a little bit of, they're doing analysis here, or do you think what are they doing so far? Are they providing some analysis? Oops.
Yes, summary.
Okay, right. They're giving summary and they're also giving a little bit of analysis, right? One of the most interesting, and then that part right there, and then that connection to like something that they already know, Newton, for instance, all of that is that middle part where you're assessing, you're evaluating, you're critical thinking on the importance or significance of this source. Okay, at the end, listen, let's see what the author does here, okay? This is what the author does at the end. I wonder how subjective time might apply to children. Well, let me read that again. I wonder how subjective time might apply to children's stories where characters listen to someone tell stories and loses track of time, a common occurrence in early 19th century literature. For example, one of Edward's Rosamond stories, or Barbauld's Juvenile Budget. This is another little story. So right here where this person goes, I wonder how, that's the connection part. So this annotated bibliography contains all of the 4 elements that are required to do a full annotated bibliography. Okay, let's take a look at another one. Okay, same thing here. And the reason why I like this one is because it has a quote that this author, this student right here, is going to then apply and use for later. Okay, so this is the last example I want you to see. This one has the citation at the top, and then it says, excellent source on consumerism in books, helpful resources for discussing The Purple Jar, which is another short story. Argues that women need to learn how to purchase things. And then here's the quote. An argument beginning to take form in the late 18th century was that women were sensitive to and could appreciate things rather than abstractions and ideas. They had the capacity for making discriminations among lesser but necessary cultural objects. This is a huge quote, right? 3 sentences long. But what it's telling me is that the author of this annotated bibliography is probably thinking, yeah, somewhere in my essay or my paper, I'm going to use that quote. Okay, then it goes on to say, women are supposed to purchase these objects to make the home a comfortable place for their husbands and families. There's an emphasis on aesthetics that I think is not like Edward's Purple Jar. Do you see that last sentence where the student here says, there's an emphasis on this thing called aesthetics that I think is not like this other thing? That right there is evidence of critical thinking and evaluation. The only thing I would add to this one is maybe a page number right here after the quote, because if you're a student and you're going to come back to your annotations, then you want to make sure you have page numbers so that you don't lose yourself, you know, or you're like, where was that good quote? Okay, okay, yes. So I'm still a little bit discombobulated from the whole recording snafu, but it's okay. We're just going to keep going. So now what I want you to do is we're going to go to this quick little quiz and kind of take a look at what we know so far. Okay, and you could either click on the QR code, or you could go to menti.com and then type in those, type in the code, or you could, you know, pull the QR code with your phone. Okay, and then meanwhile, what I'm going to do is go to the quiz and I'll meet you over there at the quiz. Okay, so what are the components of an annotated bibliography? You could list 3 or more things. So in your Mentimeter, on your Menti quiz, go to menti.com and then type in the code. And you can start entering, you could enter like 3 different things. Okay, good. Evaluations, that summary. Okay, good. What are any? Okay, very good. I see people reference. That's excellent. I'm happy somebody put reference because that's another way of saying citation. Okay. How else can you say? Paraphrase. Very good. Make a connection. Analysis. Right. Any other things that you would do for an annotated bibliography? Okay, well, let's go to the next thing. Okay, we'll actually save that one for the end, okay? So just pause right there. And then let's go back to this one. So I want to go back to here to make sure that you see this slide later when you have the link to the recording, and then you also have the link to the slides, that you pay attention to these 4 components, okay? All right, so let's go on to talk about what's the literature review. So I want you to think of the annotated bibliographies, that list of those little chunks of paragraphs where you cite it and then you say, this article is about this thing, and then you cite it.
Leticia,
Yeah, you're interrupting, but you could put in the chat, like the question, so I can see you, because I can't really see you, or you could raise your hand. Okay, so let's go on to what is the literature review. And then Ruth, I see you. I'm trying to mute you, Ruth, but I can't. So if you could mute yourself, thank you. Okay, so the literature review. Okay, so a literature review, it could either be part of a paper that you're writing, or it could be part of a larger scholarly article. And what it does is it covers different key articles on a topic that you will be discussing and synthesizing and putting in conversation in your paper. So sometimes your professor might say something like, I want 6 peer-reviewed articles. I want you to cite 6 peer-reviewed articles about this particular topic. So what you're going to need to do is figure out what is your topic about, and then find 6 related articles about that topic, and you're going to put them in conversation. And the way an annotated bibliography can help you is that it can provide for you these little chunks, paragraphs that you've already compiled, and you're going to kind of put them together and synthesize them to build a longer literature review. So the purpose of the literature review is to familiarize your reader with the topic or the area of scholarship that you're looking at. One example, one way that I've heard it described before that I really like is, for instance, let's say that you run into an old friend that you haven't seen since like elementary school or something. You run into each other. And in like 5 quick minutes, you summarize to that person, catch them up to date with like the major things that have happened that you want to share. And then vice versa, they'll take a turn and also kind of summarize the major things that have happened. So what you want to do in a literature review is kind of provide your reader, whoever's going to read your paper, usually that's your professor, with an idea that, or with a series of academic articles that kind of summarize this whole field or topic that you're looking at. So where do you find literature reviews? So literature reviews are, you can find them in short papers, and sometimes you can find them in actual like peer-reviewed journals. And so the literature review is meant to help you are the scholar in this sentence. It's meant to help make your life a little bit easier by collecting and summarizing and synthesizing information on a topic. Okay, so let's take a look at the components. It has 3 parts, a literature review. And keep in mind that a literature review is usually like 6-10 pages long, maybe. If you're doing more of an extensive research, like a graduate sort of thesis or something like that, then you're going to write a longer paper, perhaps 30 pages, 25 pages. So a review will have 3 parts to it. It'll have an introduction, which asserts what is the topic. This literature review is about the history of Latinx children's literature in the 20th century, or whatever the topic is. It asserts your topic. It gives a forecast of the key texts or the key sorts of other investigations that have been done that you're going to look at. And it's going to describe how did you find those sources? What method did you use to find those sources? You know, we did a review of the literature in the major academic databases. Then it also very quickly, briefly summarizes the takeaways that your conclusions or implications find in your, you know, in the review of the literature. When I'm saying the literature, I'm talking about the academic literature. These could be peer-reviewed articles, they could be books in chapters in a book, they could be books, or any other source or material that you're using to write an academic paper. Sometimes in a field, actually all the time in a field, no matter what you study, there are going to be some major theorists in that field, in that area. Okay, like in the area of education, Lanson Billings is a very famous, you know, educator. Giroux, he's another famous educator. Paulo Freire, right? So sometimes in your literature review, you're getting articles from major thinkers that have shaped the disciplinary area that you're in. How do we know the review articles? Okay, very good. I'm going to get to that question, Evelyn. Okay, the other thing that you're going to do once you kind of introduce your, you know, what your literature, what you're going to be talking about, who are the major theorists that you're going to be engaging, what are the implications, some of the findings that you want to just give a little taste of before you dive in. Then you're going to dive into the body. And in the body, this is the longer part of the paper. This is going to give an overview of the main points of each source. If you do an annotated bibliography, you will have already completed this part because your annotated bibliography has those little chunks of paragraphs that you've already annotated and assessed and made a connection to. When you're writing your body paragraphs, you need to make transitions between this source is connected to this source. And that's another place where you can use that Bloom's taxonomy, because you can say, while Freire argues for a more democratic process in the classroom, this particular theorist found that there are still elements of discrimination that occur that undermine the democratic process. Or while this theorist found such and such, these other two theorists later, when the technology, you know, advanced, they found a new way of doing things. So the transition is the way that you, in your own critical thinking way, are going to weave in and kind of make a quilt or like a blanket, a tejido of like all of the different pieces, all of the different literatures that you're bringing together. Your body is also going to analyze and interpret your sources. We've already done that part in the annotated bibliography. When you're writing your body paragraph, it's important to paraphrase and use your own words to describe what the authors are saying and then cite them. You could also use direct quotes. Sometimes people will say that there's more evidence, you can paraphrase it rather than just having all kinds of direct quotes. And then you're also going to discuss the significance. You might want to say something about like, this particular article is strong because it provides this or this. It's not as strong as this other article. The findings of this article are more important because, so in all of these sorts of ways that you're writing in the body paragraphs, you're going to, again, transition between source to source. You're going to build upon one source to the next source, connect them, compare them, and contrast them. And at the very end, this is the smallest part of your literature review. That's where you're going to re-summarize some of the key findings. And then something that I like to do in a conclusion is, instead of just repeating everything that I read or said in the intro, what I'm going to do is maybe posit some questions for the future, like things that other future researchers should keep in mind. Okay, so Okay, so let's take a look at some of the ways that you can organize the literature review. And the formatting on this is a little bit wonky, so let me move that up so we can all see it. I'm also going to show after this one, I'm going to talk about your question. Okay, Evelyn? So let me go up here and just move this so we can all see what it is. Okay, so how to organize a literature review. How long should the literature review? Depends, but it could be a good 6 pages. It could be 10 pages. It all depends on how much literature you're engaging. If you have like 6 annotations and each annotation is a good chunk paragraph, 2 of those annotations are going to take up a page. Does that kind of make sense? So there's no like exactly number of what a literature review should, how long it should be, because you could have a whole like chapter. If you're writing a thesis, like for instance, one of your chapters could be just a literature review, and that's going to be expensive. Okay. Oh, I guess this last part is not correct. That's why it was like that. Okay, so one of the ways that you could format your literature review is to do a chronology. Like you can trace the development of breakthroughs. Like in the 70s, the technology was like this. In the 80s, it was like this, et cetera, and kind of provide like a chronology of those, of how the topic unfolds. You could also organize it around themes. So like, let's say, for instance, your theme is on women of color feminists. If that's sort of your broad theme, your little sub themes could be Black feminist thought, Chicana feminist thought, indigenous feminisms. And this methodological part, which I will fix after right now, is you can divide up your literature review to say, first, I'm going to engage the quantitative research on the health disparities of older people in Boyle Heights. Then I'm going to go into the qualitative research where different sorts of methods have been used to interview and to pull qualitative data on this particular population. So there's different ways of organizing or formatting your literature review. One of the things that I would like to point to you is this really wonderful article. The authors are Boot and Bale, and the link to this article will be in the slides. And what they provide is this cool table or a grid of what a really sort of like a rubric of what a literature review should do. It should provide coverage on a topic. It should provide synthesis of the ideas, what's been done in the field, what needs to be done. Why is this research important in the historical context? It should also cover methodologies. What have researchers done in this particular area or topic? How have they conducted research in this area? What's the significance of this research that's been done? How has it moved the field forward? And then any sort of comment on the rhetorical sort of constructions, that's even, you know, something more sophisticated that you could do. Is it written clearly? Is it strong? Is it a weak argument? That sort of thing. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of go through here. And so these are the guides, the quick guides. And what I want to go to once I get out of here is I want to address the question of how do I know it's a literature review? Okay, so I want to share with you this article. It's actually an article that I am that I'm reading myself. And the article is called that means conversations, moving towards transformative qualitative inquiries. Okay, so here we have the title of the article. Then in this case, there are 4 authors, Carmona James, Delgado Bernal, and Hassan Sarir. And this article was published in the journal Qualitative Inquiry. It has 8 pages from page 1 to 8. And it's got a DOI. So it has some of those elements of the citation. So if you're going to do an annotated bibliography, you would need to pull that. Okay, how can you tell like where the argument is or where the literature review part of this article is. Usually the literature review part of the article happens up front. So for instance, it starts with an abstract. In this article, we engage pláticas, which is a conversational method, to write about the methodology of pláticas. We show the use of this method. Let me read that again. We show the use of this method by theorizing the pláticas. Our pláticas helped us to reveal how we have experienced epistemicide and apartheid of knowledge, blocked by epistemological racism in academia. Okay, and then they go on to say we emphasized how the marginalization and invalidation in academia of this method happens and continues to happen, especially in the social sciences. Okay, so here in the introduction, just by kind of looking at it, I see that they're doing what is called pláticas. So they're having this conversation. First, it's Dolores sharing, then it's Judith sharing, then it's Manal. And you see how they have their names here? That means that they're engaging in this example. And they provide this example to illustrate to the reader that that's the method that we're talking about in this essay. Okay, so then right here in the very beginning, that's sort of the introduction part, which is this part right here. And then it goes into over here, this part. How do I know that this part here is part of the literature review? Because visually, I can already see that the authors of this article are citing people. You see how they have citations there? They're talking about their ideas, but they're also citing other people. That right there is a key giveaway that that part of the article where there's a lot of different citations happening, that's the literature review section of this article. There's a little bit more kind of literature review of the article. And then they go into like the study or the analysis that they're doing. Okay, so yeah, so does that kind of make sense, Evelyn? Does that kind of make
Yes,
sense?
it does. It does.
Okay.
It's helpful. Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's take a look at another article. Okay, so this one again is like in children's literature, because if you know me, if you've done these sessions, you know that that's the area that I research. One of the areas that I research is children's literature. But so a lot of my examples are from that kind of field or disciplinary area. Okay, but this is a chapter in a book. And what I like about this example, which you'll have the link to as well, is that it kind of shows you in these annotations what's going on in this article. So this whole article right here begins with like 2 paragraphs of just introduction. And right here where it says establishes the conversation amongst the scholars, that's where the literature review portion is occurring in this essay. So in the social sciences, sometimes the way that essays or articles are put together is different from the humanities, the arts and letters. It can be sort of different approaches. Sometimes in a social sciences article, you'll have a section that's titled Literature Review. And you obviously know, okay, whatever's going to follow in that section, that's the literature review where all the in-text citations are. They're making references to other people that have done work in these areas. In a humanist article, it's more of like a weaving kind of process where they're not going to tell you up front, this is the literature review. But as the reader, as you're reading the essay, you're going to know because they're going to make reference to the work of somebody else. Okay, so here's a little bit more of a literature review. If you were to read this article, you would see that there's references to other writers. And then it isn't until page 2, which right here where you see thesis, it isn't until page 2 where the author actually gets into like saying the argument that I'm making is such and such. Okay, so let me see if I can show you another example. Okay, this is the one actually that I wanted to show you. Okay, so this is another example of a social science essay. And let me give you the breakdown of how this article is organized. All right, so this one is also about pláticas, and the examples I'm using have to do with this particular methodology because it's a methodology that I'm going to be using in my own research. So I'm going to answer that question in a second. Okay, Evelyn? Okay, so this one's also about pláticas, okay, which is a Chicana feminist epistemological method, a methodology for making theory, and sort of from like the conversations that women have, and in this case, Chicana Latina women, from the conversations, that's the data, then the people who are in that conversation, they make theory, they make analysis of the things that they talk about. That's a very legitimate methodological approach. Okay, so we have the title of the essay, we have the authors. Remember, there's always this little, like right here, there's always that little abstract that tells you in a nutshell, what is this article about? Okay, we have some keywords, and then they dive into the introduction, right? And in this case, both of the authors are describing in the first couple of pages how their experience is or has been engaging in pláticas. And then they arrive here at the crux of their essay by saying, right here in this sentence, despite the importance of pláticas to our personal and scholarly work, it was not until a series of kitchen table pláticas with graduate students that we began to realize that there was a dearth of scholarship that really went into detail about pláticas as a research method or methodology. Right there, this sentence says there was something missing from the research, from the literature. There was something missing. We've identified a gap. That's a very common kind of move that you can make as a writer. And so the purpose then of this essay, and then they say it right here, the purpose of this article is to do just that, to provide a thorough discussion and explicit conceptualization of pláticas. That's the purpose, okay? So when you're reading strategically, look for these keywords. So when you're writing your annotation, you can say, after you do your citation, you can say, the main purpose of the Fierros and Delgado Bernal article is to conceptualize pláticas as a theoretical methodology used in Chicana feminist methodologies or theory. Okay, so before they actually get to that though, they're going to, right here, we then provide a literature review that examines pláticas as they were used in sociology. So I'm going to ask you right here, what method are they using? Are they doing chronology, like what happened in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s? Are they doing sort of subheadings? They're kind of doing a mix of both. And you can kind of see right here, because it says like in the 70s, this is the way that people talked about pláticas, okay? And so as you're going through here, here's those in-text citations that are that dead giveaway that you're in the literature review section of the article. If you attended the reading critically in college workshop that we did a couple weeks ago, this is one of those things that we talked about, is sort of like reading strategically to find those keywords in the article that are going to tell you, okay, right, this is the literature part. How do I know? Because they're citing this person and that person. And then they keep going, and then they say, okay, so they keep going, and then over here in this part of the literature review, they're saying, this is how pláticas were used in Hispanic focused research. Okay, and again, they kind of give you the chronology of what that looked like in the 70s. And then finally, at the end, you know that they're not in the literature review portion of their essay anymore, because they're gonna transition into something else. Okay, so finally, though the aforementioned researchers named their use of pláticas as a method, it appears that pláticas were used more as a method rather than a methodology. Okay, and so right here, this is what they're going to go into next, where they're going to theorize this particular approach as a methodology and then conceptualize it. So I don't necessarily, although for this one I did, necessarily need to read an article from beginning to the end to kind of know where, based on the knowledge that I have of how essays are put together, where to look for the literature review portion. So when you are new to a topic, and you read literature review articles, they're really important because they help you to understand like the discussions that are occurring in a topic or in an area. Okay, this last slide just has a lot of different links, and I'm going to show you maybe my favorite link, which is the APA quick guide. It's right here. I'm going to drop it in the chat as well. And I'm going to answer the question that Evelyn posed, which is, if we ever need help to write a thesis, can you help us, Leti? Absolutely, I can do my best as a librarian to help you. The other thing that if you're a graduate student, what I highly recommend is to seek out the help at the Graduate Research Center, which is located at the library on the basement level. If you're an undergrad student, I also recommend that you seek out the help at the Writing Center because you can make appointments there. And then you can always email me and make an appointment with me. And try to make the appointment as soon as you possibly can. A lot of the appointments with me kind of fill up very quickly. Okay, one last thing for everybody who's kind of stuck around despite the technology snafu, I'm so sorry about that, is I want to kind of give you a little search tip, okay? So let's say that you're looking for a literature review. So I'm going to put literature review on public health and COVID. Okay, so what am I doing? I'm here at Cal State L.A. Library, our homepage. Right in here in this one search, when I put the words literature review, I'm telling the database, keep these two words together and find me articles that are providing a review of the literature as it pertains to public health and COVID. And then when I search it, what will happen here is the database is going to get to work. And then okay, so for instance, you see how this one right away, it says a literature review of the economics of COVID. This essay is written for people like me that need to get caught up on all of the main points, the main debates, the key things that pertain to the economics of COVID-19. Okay, so then if I roll down a little bit, this one's also a good one, number 4, COVID-19 and HIV-infected patients, a case series and literature review. So this thing about putting literature review in your databases, in your database search, is also very helpful for when you're finding articles. Okay, I'm going to do another example using that same technique of literature review. You could use that in Google as well if you're searching in Google Scholar. Now I'm going to go into a subject database right here, databases. And instead of searching the one search, I'm going to search in one of the databases for, let's say, for psychology. Okay, because I'm in, let's say I'm a student that is in psychology and I'm earning my degree in rehab and counseling services. Psycho, I know that that's a database we use all the time in my classes. So I'm going to get in here and I need like, after I sign in, I need a literature review about mental health approaches for like mental health best practices for college students during like COVID-19. Okay, so let me, so my terms are literature review. Okay, and it's already saying, oh yeah, it's coming up already. And then I'm gonna do mental health or mental health, and all of these. Actually, I'm going to put all of those. And then I'm going to do college students or university students or undergraduate students. And then when I search, what will happen is I'm going to get results that are going to provide me with literature reviews, like number 2. This is about female athletes and systemic literature review about female athletes and eating disorders. Oh, I forgot one important thing. I need to click peer review. All of this stuff, I think a lot of you in this session already know on how to pull these articles, but I'm just wanting to show you how when you insert the words literature review in a quote, this is a really good way to get to sort through all of the different articles and find articles that are going to provide you with a summary about the key findings on a particular topic. Okay, so I think that's where I'm going to leave you. And I am so sorry we had, you know, that technology issue, but maybe that's a good reminder to me that, you know, whenever there's little setbacks, there's always a chance to keep going. And maybe that's a good reminder, you know, a reminder through like an experience that we had in the beginning that, you know, we could just keep going, right? Just try again. I highly recommend to everybody here in the room to please do not wait until the last minute. Even if you only do a little bit, that's a good way of kind of getting some momentum rather than leaving it all to the last minute. I often work in 20-minute increments. So I could put a 20-minute timer and I work for 20 minutes and then I go take a break. Like I go do something else for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, then I come back again. And doing those 20-minute increments has helped me to not only like shake off sometimes when I feel like overwhelmed and I can't even do anything because I'm too overwhelmed and stressed out. That helps me to just shake that off and just do a little bit, whatever I can right now. So I want to pass on that advice to you because we really are going into the last, you know, final weeks of the semester. And I know that it gets very stressful during these times. If you missed the other sections that we've done, the APA workshop, the how to read for college, never fear, we upload them all right here on our Cal State LA YouTube. I hope that you will click subscribe. And then you can also find us on Instagram at Cal State LA Library. Just look up Cal State LA Library Instagram, you'll find it. I forget what our handle is. Every Wednesday, me and my partner at the library, we have a little program, Work It Out Wednesdays. Throw me a thumbs up if you've seen that. I'm going to talk about literature reviews and annotated bibliographies again on Work It Out Wednesday tomorrow. I don't know if anybody has seen that on Instagram. If you haven't, it's kind of funny because we just do it kind of live, and in 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, I give a quick mini lesson. Okay, students. So with that, I think we're going to end it there. Okay, thank you for the heart. I really appreciate that. And Carolina and Julio, everybody else. Thank you so much. Thanks for hanging in there despite technology. Thank you to that little dog who gave his salutation.
Thank you,
And,
Leticia.
you're so welcome. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
And thank
all
you so
information.
much for calling the attention to that, what was going on. I didn't realize.
Excuse me, do you have one next week?
We do, yes. We have the last one is next week. So
Before
make
the
sure to
finals.
come. It's going to be at 4:30 and I will send an email announcement, kind of like how you got one today. I will send one, Kalichi, for next week.
Okay.
Thank you, Leticia.
Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for hanging in there. I will re-record the session, the beginning part, and see if we can like edit it and I can do the beginning part and then connect the last part to it. Okay, so to avoid all of those, the technology thing that happened. Okay, so
See you next Tuesday, so.